Welcome to another edition of the Broad the Lines UK podcast, episode 111. That's the Nelson Up. Long John Silver, try gone wrong Silver. Cheers for that, Ant. You're a legend. I love it. I'm here with my co-host, Ant, Tom, Ryan. How you doing, boys?
Steady.
I think I'm better than that in terms of, I think I'm above steady, but we're at that point now. It's January, it's dark, it's miserable.
Yeah, as me and Ryan were discussing, our football's depressing us, so, it is what it is. It just, it brings you down.
I've recovered from the Pro Bowl. What a travesty. Please just get rid of it. It's a laughing stock. I hate it.
It was like watching the Chicago Bears offense of the last 2 years. It made you want to prod your eyes out with sharp pins. It was that bad.
I mean, I just don't watch it and my life is enriched for that process. I mean, I was busy, but I would not have watched it out of choice. And I mean, there were more important things this weekend, right? With the Senior Bowl?
That was a little bit better.
Yeah. The game's not very good, but I don't watch the Senior Bowl for the game. Yeah. I watch it for the workouts and the practices because I saw some good stuff. Because like Kelvin Shepherd and that was good content to see.
Yeah, the practices are good. They're not the easiest to find, especially when you're based in the UK. But the practices are good fun. It's good to see some of the. I mean, we'll come on to it, but some of the Lions coaches you don't see quite so much get some attention as well.
Well, let's talk about it a bit now because the College Football Podcast, I believe, Ant, is going to talk about this in depth on Wednesday, so we can just have a brief chat about it now.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
We sort of discussed a bit of the practices last week. There were a few guys who were showing out there, but I mean, there was some certain position groups this week for me that just put the stock through the roof. Anyone who went to that thing who was a D lineman is now probably a round higher than they were before this started. The D line absolutely wreaked havoc this week, and conversely, the O line, vast majority of them looked absolutely shocking. But I mean, it's interesting. There's some names coming to the fore now that you wouldn't before, who are now in first round contention. There are a lot of good guys on show.
There's some good coaching on show as well. There's one point where Drew Staley told everyone to line up behind the quarterback who would win the accuracy contest. Like, he made them make a decision in front of everybody and put a lot of pressure on them. Like, normally they wouldn't want to take sides, so I liked that. Like, back your horse. It was good to see the coach as well. I like the drill like Kelvin Shepherd. Like, he put some really interesting drills out. Like, there's a big hoop and he's put like some rings in it, and they had to do like figures of 8, chasing each other to see how quickly they could bend and get around the corner. And like, you really see who's flexible and who's not. Like, I think he's actually a really good riser potential in the Lions coaching ranks in the coming years.
I tell you what, was it only just me who wanted to see Drew Staley and that absolute fucking behemoth who was coaching for the Jets have a wrestling match or something? I mean, those two, they're bloody huge. I would pay to see that.
But throw that 380-pound tackle in there as well. Maybe you can ref it.
Yeah, triple threat between the three of them. I mean, good God, there was some big guys on show this week. But I mean, yeah, the D line really did well. I mean, I was watching. Luke did a video on him the other day, but boy, Maffei, he had a week to remember there. Perry and Winfrey, he's put himself in first round contention. I don't think he's going to drop out the first now. Some of these guys had incredibly good weeks, and it sort of adds to this conundrum that you don't really need to go for an edge rush for it too. This class is so deep and so talented. It's like, where'd you find maximum value out of these guys? It's thrown up some really, really tantalizing questions.
Yeah, a lot of the guys who ended up being called out as winners seem to come actually from the national team and the Jets practices. Like I say, you mentioned Winfrey and Travis Jones and Christian Watson, the receiver, but I guess the big talking point from the American team was the Malik Willis hype train going full steam ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm going to find some metalwork tools and destroy a piece of the track and derail it. That's what needs to happen with that.
Well, I do think the interest. So I was trying to think back to previous years, and I actually did a bit of digging this morning before work, and I was looking at. I put a custom search on Google and looked up until basically this date in 2017, and the kind of 3 months before, because I was interested to see, obviously, Mahomes went number 10 in the draft, Watson went 12 in the draft. What were people saying at this time? And I went back, and the NFL.com, Bleacher Report, all these mock drafts, they didn't even have Mahomes in the first round at this stage. Very few had Watson in the top 10, and obviously he didn't go in the top 10, but really being talked about. Some had DeShone Kizer up there, but it was kind of like Trubisky was there or thereabouts, but again, not often being mocked where he eventually went. Mahomes wasn't relevant. Watson was down in the back end of the first in a lot of these. So I think it's just a reminder that the draft cycle is long. We still got 3 months till the big day. And I'm by no means jumping on the Malik Willis at 2 hype train, but it's just amazing how things can change in this next 3 months, or how they will change.
And a little guy by the name of Aaron Donald as well was considered a second-day pick before he went to the Senior Bowl and just absolutely bullied the life out of everybody else who was there. And they're like, oh yeah, this guy's actually pretty good. But you've seen some similar performances. I've mentioned guys already, some defensive tackles, ends who've come in and absolutely obliterated the competition this weekend. I think you're going to see some similar rises here. And again, people just realizing how stacked this class is on that defensive line. There's just so many good prospects there. And, it's just like you're in a candy store and, whatever you pick, you're going to like, I reckon.
Yeah, so on that point, there was a question from Dan saying Kinsley Enagbare, or however you say that name. Enagbare. Will he be there with the Rams pick, assuming we don't get an edge with the first one?
I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Because others have jumped him. Not saying that he's not good, but I think especially Maffey and Winfrey, a couple of other guys I think have jumped him, and because of the positional depth, I think he'll hang around some. So I can see him being there with the Rams pick quite easily.
And Ashley's draft crush as well has obviously kind of separated himself as well.
Jermaine was that good. He didn't even need to take part in the game. Man just kind of strolled in, destroyed practice and left.
Oh, Jermaine's going top 15 now, I think. He did what he needed to do, didn't go for the silly throwback game, did his business and left. Yeah, he's secured the bag.
I think he's edge 4 behind Carl Aftis, very close. They could maybe trade with one another, who knows, but he's had a great week there. But there's some others. I mean, we talk about defense here. Offensively, I mean, the one that I'm really struggling with now, because I really want to draft him, is Trey McBride. He had an immensely good week, and you saw it for his receiving skills mainly, but he's a tight end who's a great blocker. And I said on the college podcast, he can be a receiver. He just needs to be utilized more as one. And you saw that week they were doing so, and he excelled. I mean, his battles with Jalen Petra me and Ryan discussed them last week. Him and Jalen Petra were just really pushing one another hard, but he was bullying him. And Jalen Petra had one of the better weeks of the safeties at the Senior Bowl, yet Trey McBride had him on toast. So that was great from him, and his draft stock's going up. But as a tight end too, if you want a guy there, he's there. I mean, Zion Johnson, he balled out as well, the guard from Boston College. If you're one of those who is open to letting Vitae go to save the money, I mean, he now represents another tantalizing prospect who's going to be there at 34 or so, who would provide you value. So there's some really intriguing storylines come out of this. And you're not even got to the quarterbacks yet.
No. So if you want to listen to more about all of that, then don't forget to tune in on Wednesday for the College Football Podcast. A couple of other questions and comments just come in. BiggerRes70 just used the highlight my message feature in Twitch to say that Houston have officially hired Lovie Smith as head coach. Dan has also chimed in with hey guys, if we don't take Malik Willis or any other quarterback this year, what would be your plan next year as in 2023?
KJ Jefferson.
Really?
Yep.
That's too much for me. I can't bank on 2023 KJ Jefferson.
I can. Hang on, and you're coming from a guy who absolutely despised him at the start of this year. I thought he was absolutely atrocious. But the way he's played and the way he's rebounded the second half of the season, the guy can play. And if he has a similar season next year, yeah, he'll not be laughing. He'll be widely, but everyone's saying, oh, CJ Stroud, oh, Bryce Young. KJ Jefferson's the sleeper. He's the one you're going to want.
What I would say on that is there's been talks about trades up, trades down, etc., etc. I think there is an interesting wrinkle, which maybe we'll kind of get into more in the offseason, but around the Lions trading more of their capital this year to try and pick up a bit more next year so they can try and move things around. For example, if they were to trade down from 2, rather than getting capital this year, would they be interested in first rounders next year? Just think it's something to monitor.
If you could trade down from 2 to 20 and get 20, a second round pick, and a first rounder next year from a team not particularly good at the moment, I'd be somewhat tempted.
Now, this team needs elite talent in it. It needs elite rookie talent. You've got to have a top 10 pick in there who's very, very good. And there are guys like that around this year. I think that's too far. And plus, you're getting all these picks and you might not even make it to the top next year. Depends how the Lions do. We have a favorable schedule. We could potentially be too far away to trade up. And it's not like the Rams pick's going to be probably that great either to help us. So I don't think you can
you're
bank
assuming
on
that
that.
Stafford doesn't retire this offseason, but never mind. We'll get into this sort of chat more as the offseason goes on. Dan said, what if someone trades with the Jags for a QB? Don't think it changes our strategy whatsoever. What if we trade down this year to trade up the quarterback next year? What the guys were just discussing. But we'll get more into that later on in this off-season. Let's crack on with the show. And just want to start off by saying, don't forget to join our Discord channel if you haven't already. Really good chat in there all the way through this week, talking about the soccer that's been happening, as well as the Senior Bowl's been a big, topic in there, and lots of other talking points. So, we talk in there first if you want to chat to us directly, or we'll probably drop some little Easter eggs in there at some point. So do join that. We'll send out tweets with a link, or DM us if you want that. I've mentioned College Football Podcast on Wednesday. Don't forget to like and sub on our channels. We'd really appreciate that. Affiliate status now on Twitch, so if you can throw us your Prime sub on there, won't cost you a penny, but we'll shift $2 from Jeff Bezos to us, which might come in handy some way down the stretch. If you can do that, that would be great. Let's get on with the news. And to lead us off, we've got former offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, Anthony Lynn, has joined the San Francisco 49ers as an assistant head coach, which is great news for him. I mean, I don't think anyone here particularly dislikes Lynn. I don't think he, made a bad name for himself here. It didn't quite work. The chemistry wasn't there, but he was not a bad guy. And, I think that's a really good landing spot for him, especially given what they do in the run game there. What is interesting about this is that national writer for Sports Illustrated, Mike Silver, decided to wade in with all this rubbish, saying that, the San Francisco organization, maybe since they're so successful, know a bit more about what makes a good coach than Dan Campbell does, and that Dan Campbell's effectively a failure because he can't make talent work here. Eric Schlitt decided that without naming Silver, he'd say, it's understandable you don't know the Detroit Lions that well because you're a national media guy, but you don't focus on us very much, so you don't know what you're talking about, but did not name Silver in that tweet. And Silver had the temerity to really try and one-up him by calling him some sort of tin pot fake journalist who can't be objective because he supports the team that he covers. Forgetting, of course, Mike Silver made his name covering the 49ers as a 49ers fan, which is insane to me. I don't know if you guys saw all of this blow up on Twitter over the weekend. It was shameful by Silver to he didn't just go in once or twice, and he pretty much replied to everyone who took a dig at him for his stand. I mean, it was the saltiest, it doubled down on the bad take so many times. It's like, what are you doing? Why be like this? What do you guys make of what happened?
He was smart enough not to come after us, though, which would have been a mistake on his part. So, he's at least clever. He's at least clever in that regard, because I retweeted it. But, bashing Detroit on social media is just, we've said this so many times now. It's the in vogue thing. If you want to make yourself seem relevant, then you can usually get away with saying something bad about us. That's why we employ Ash. as our little investigative journalist to keep all these tweets hidden and bookmarked so that we can bring it to the attention of people and just show people what utter trollop people are saying about us. You know, there's a lot of legitimate things you can say about this franchise, but you wade in with something like that, which is completely untrue. The facts are there. All you have to do is watch an Anthony Lynn ran offense game this year and a Dan Campbell ran offense game this year to show the difference between the two of them. Lynn's was predictable and boring and didn't score points, whereas Campbell's was ingenuitive, it was fancy, it was, you know, it kept teams guessing, and he was blatantly so much better at utilizing the players at his disposal. And, you know, just to come in with something like this, it's just lazy hack journalism. I mean, if you look at it on paper, then you could say, yeah, you know, what are the Detroit Lions doing? But, you know, do your research, man. Really, and it's blown up in his face big time, and rightfully so. And anyone who wants to put up a lazy take about Detroit on Twitter, anywhere, we will find you and we will call you out on it. Speak BS, then, you know, the world will know.
All right, let's move on. So, Senior Bowl has concluded. The Lions coached American team lost the game, but I think all the coaching staff have come out really well from the process, and obviously more about that on Wednesday. Jim Harbaugh in the last week has confirmed that he will stay on as a U of M head coach despite interviewing for, I mean, I saw someone say he interviewed for 7 hours in Minnesota, which is just insane to do that and not get offered the job. It's mad. I mean, maybe he did get offered the job and turned it down after that, but I don't know. Micah Parsons has revealed he thought that he would be the Lions pick at 7. Apparently in the off-season, he was told if he was on the board at the Lions pick that he would be the pick, but obviously he then said no one saw Sewell falling that far, so we can understand why it happened that way. And finally, Brad Holmes has stated at the Senior Bowl when asked that he is always open for whatever in relation to trades in the 2022 NFL Draft. Obviously the implication was about trading down from 2, but he left the door wide open to go up, go down, or perhaps, as we were saying, trade into 2023. So everything is on the table, boys, when it comes to the draft this year.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I don't see why any general manager would ever say that they're not open for business. Because there was a story a week or so ago around Miami trying to make a move for Joe Burrow a couple of years ago and offering 3 firsts, and Cincinnati said absolutely not. But you're still going to be open for business in case they come back with more picks, more players, more anything. So it feels like this happens every year, is whoever the Lions GM is says they're open for business, because why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, he's basically saying, like, don't be surprised when I do something surprising. I think he will make a big trade. I think he will use that for extra first next year. Don't matter what position it is. And I think he'll trade up in the first round. I think we'll jump from 32 to 21 or 17. It would not surprise me if they fall in love with someone, like, and they want that supreme talent on the roster. I think they will pull the trigger because he's balls in. I like that. He won't just sit back and watch the chips fall. Like, he'll do something. The trade where we got Derek Barnes, that confused people. We thought, well, he'd still be there. He wasn't so sure. He wanted him, so he went and got him. So we've already seen that if you like someone, he sets his sights on him. He's willing to give up a little bit to just jump the gun a bit. And I like that. At least it makes it more exciting.
If he can trade pick 2 away, then he should get GM of the year, because there's no value pick at 2 this year in Mo. There's only Kyle Hamilton, and no one wants to pick a safety at 2. So, you know, I don't think we're going to see out there. History says that people don't really trade into the top 5 for edge players. I'd look through there don't seem to be that much in the trade market there. So I know I'd expect to see something lower down, but I think we're stuck with 2, unfortunately. We're just going to have to make a decision with that. But at the end of the first, as Ryan said, can see something happening there, especially if they've fallen in love with someone at Senior Bowl week. Then, you know, absolutely, I think they might go up and try and get a guy. Just quickly falling back on the Micah Parsons thing, I took a lot of heat last year when everyone said, nah, Lions are never going to draft Micah Parsons. Well, thank you. They justified me there by saying they would take him if the board had fell that way. And, you know, it's a big what if, but I think all the teams in the end, it was quite good. All teams won last year in the top bit of the draft. Obviously, the Bengals have won with Chase. We won with Sewell. The Cowboys won with Parsons. So everybody got who they wanted, and it worked out. But
I mean,
nice to know they would have had him.
That brings us very nicely on to the next segment. So tonight we're talking about the 2021 NFL draft in general, so not just focusing on the Lions, but the entire draft, what sticks out to us, who took who, what went well, what didn't, and perhaps the best value picks in there. Going to go on to talk about Brad Holmes and how he's done in year one, and then to finally preview the Super Bowl happening on Sunday. So this is our last episode before that. And let's kick off with the 2021 NFL draft. It obviously was headed by Trevor Lawrence at number 1. He'd been anointed for some time in that position, probably 2.5 years before then. But when he entered college, he was almost a presumptive number 1 pick in the draft and never really fell away from that. Zach Wilson went at 2 to the Jets. You then obviously had other people in that first round, such as Trey Lance, Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Sewell. You had Devonta Smith, Justin Fields, Micah Parsons. Lots of other guys in there. I don't know if we're just maybe going to focus on round 1 just for a minute, and perhaps for you guys to select a kind of favourite pick in there. Now we're looking back a year on, least favourite pick, maybe taking some of the injuries that ended some people's seasons out of the equation. So looking at like kind of the definite things that we know and don't know. And then maybe we can have a look at the entire draft of things we like and don't like. So does anyone want to kick off with anything particularly obvious or any hot takes?
Kyle Pitts was a bad pick because I saw the Falcons this year, that offensive line, utter garbage. Jalen Mayfield was pretty much a bystander. Matt Ryan had a torrid year. He was getting chased down left, right, and centre. He was struggling to get anything going in the pocket. He was a flashy luxury option. I think they should have taken Sewell or even Slater or traded back. I think in the short term, the pick looks good, but long term, Matty Ice is aging. He's one big injury away from calling it a day. He's not very well protected. And ultimately, it didn't help them win that many more games, I don't think. So I understand the pick, but in the long-term grand scheme of things, I think they will look back at it and think probably should have played it a little more conservative.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. I think it was a really, really bad pick. They didn't need it. You know, Matt Ryan's getting older. They needed a quarterback then, and they're going to struggle to get one now. And I think they're going to regret it in the long term. But, I mean, there were a lot of good winners last year. I mean, the Chargers, to have Rashawn Slater fall to them at 13 this season, he's done even better than Sewell has. And, you know, to get that sort of a franchise left tackle at 13, not having to give up any trade capital or anything for him is something quite spectacular. So, you know, that was an absolutely great pick by them. Like I said, I think that sort of 5 to 12 range, I think most of the teams really, you know, they did really well out of it. Like I say, you've got Chase, who's done really well at the Bengals. Waddle's had a great year with the Dolphins. Sewell's obviously done well with us. Sertan's had a good year. So's Devonta Smith. Fields remains to be seen as whether the Bears made the right thing there or not. But I think a lot of teams did well in that area. But the second half of the first round I think that was really dire. There were some really bad picks in there. And the Raiders, they cemented their sort of legacy of picking the worst first rounders going. You know, Leatherwood was such a reach, it was unreal, and he led the league. I think it was 67 pressures he gave up last year. That was league leading. That's how bad he was, and you know, that's just how bad their recruitment is. I just don't get how they get it wrong every year. But conversely, it's one of the funny parts of the first round to see who they're going to draft, and we're never going to see it again, which is a shame.
You say that now.
Yeah.
Well,
I think looking down the list, especially as you say in the first half of the first round, but is one of the most talented groups of players after a year that I can remember seeing. Especially, admittedly, at the top. I mean, Lawrence didn't do what you would have wanted as a Jags fan. Wilson, question marks. Lance, question marks, but he was raw. If you take the quarterbacks out of it, you really struggle going down the list to see guys that haven't shown something. Like, I agree on Pitts. It reminds me actually a little bit of taking Megatron in 2007 when the rest of the team just wasn't there. I think it was a luxury, but Pitts himself looks like a really good player. All the way down that list, even injured guys, J.C. Horn looked really good in those few games he played. But Jalen Phillips came on late. He started slow and they really started to show things. And it just looks like there is a lot of talent, or a lot of guys that you don't don't scream miss. And fans and everyone are far too quickly to write off people as busts. It's pretty tough to look at guys so far in the first round. Obviously, there are a few, but look at guys that you're like, yeah, they're absolutely a bust, because a lot of them have shown something. Even if you go down to the bottom and you look at Owe, Gregory Rousseau, Stokes was actually not fantastic, but he kind of flashed in bits. So the whole way down there was talent. I think, yeah, it's definitely rare.
I was thinking about I thought Owe was a massive reach. Did he not have a sack at Penn State? Like, he'd gone a whole career, and then to come out with 5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 recoveries, I thought, well, they might have actually got themselves a player here. He looked a menace when he was getting in the backfield, so that looks like it could be a really savvy move. Like say, it looked good on tape. Like say, flashes there.
Ironically, he's probably going to have made his old high school friend in David Ajabo some money, because obviously similar style play, lots of traits, not perfect production, but definitely more with Ajabo. But you would expect that he's probably going to go higher in the process than Owe did.
You'd think so. It's a really weird one, because the draft seems to kind of at the top 2 or top 3, not that great, maybe top 4, but then seems to go well for about 10, 12 picks. And then that middle's iffy for me. So starting with Zaven Collins at 16, Collins, Leatherwood, Jamin Davis, Kadarius Toney, Caleb Farley, Travis Etienne. Like, that's a run of 10 or so picks, like kind of 7 or 8 of which have not done much in relation to the guys below them. Say Rashad Bateman looked really good when he was healthy. Eric Stokes, like I said, flashed. Rousseau. So I'll go into this later, but Rousseau is the best value first round player by the little quick analysis I did without adjustments for biasing on the value of picks. But I effectively just did an analysis on the average value per Pro Football Reference that they give to someone for a season, which is fairly not arbitrary, but like it's 3 or it's 4, and it's not 3.5. So like, there's big step jumping. But divide that from the pick value on the pick value chart for the 3,000 points per player, and you get some sort of approximate value. So at number 1 overall, you've got to be a Pro Bowler year 1 in order to live up to your value, because that's where you've been taken, and that's why the pick is worth a lot. If you look at what's happened, Rousseau is one of only 7 players to get double-digit AV on the year, but he got taken 30. So, like, as a value pick, that's the biggest in the first round by far. The lowest is obviously Zach Wilson and then Trevor Lawrence, because they both had relatively poor years right at the top of the draft. But it's an interesting analysis. We'll go into that maybe in a little bit more detail later, but having a look at the rest of the draft, is there anyone that really stands out to you as just awful bust type player, or like kind of really great value somewhere? What do you guys make of it?
What, are we talking first round here? Or
No, anywhere now. Let's stretch it out.
Oh, well, I think the Browns got an absolute steal with Joke. Aruso Koromoa. He fell, halfway into the second. He's had a brilliant year, and we said at the time, I can't believe he fell so far, and for them to get him there, that was a steal then, and I think he's performed up to expectations to provide that as a massive steal. I'm really jealous they were able to get him so low.
Yeah, I think when the guy I ended up, who really went up kind of in my rankings towards the end was Javon Holland, and he went a few picks before the Lions, which I was a bit gutted about. He's obviously had a great year, but then Trayvon Merrick had a pretty good year. He was going to, but JOK was just fantastic. And in fact, there's quite a few of these second round guys that have made a bit of a statement. Ojolari, who I wasn't that high on, to be honest, he had a good year with the Giants, and Frymuth, obviously did some things for the Steelers. So there's definitely some guys. Asante Samuel as well had a really good year for the Chargers. The Chargers just seem to. Is Tom Telesco still their GM? I can't remember, but they seem to draft pretty well. They always seem to find these guys. So,
I mean, just look. Yeah, you just best say you said it.
Yeah. I went on about him all last draft cycle. You know, it was a shame that we have a top center already, because he would have been top of my draft list. I banged the drum, and he's had an absolutely sensational year. He's been as just as good as I thought he would be. And for him, again, he fell right to the bottom of the second. The Packers passed on him, which made me laugh. I know Myers hasn't had that much. He's had a decent enough year, although he's been injured. But, Humphrey was a superstar from day one. You could tell he were going to be. And, Chiefs really, really looked out with that. But, I mean, you look back and, man, the Bucs struggled with their two. I mean, they took Trask at the end of two. And they had, what was his face? Joe Tryon at the end of one. I don't think he did a great deal for them. Trask hasn't played. They had a rough first 2 rounds.
Tryon had a lot of buzz out of the preseason, and I think started the season okay, but then just seemed to fall off the face of the earth. I don't think he really did anything in the kind of final 12, 13 games.
Yeah, looking at... Sorry.
Pete Werner is a player I really liked. He looks like a leader on that New Orleans defense. On the games I saw, he looks like someone that could have stepped straight into our linebacker core. He'll be calling plays, I think, from next year. Like, they weren't a great defense, but he took some form of leadership on. He's great against the run as well. Comes up in the box really well. So I think he went in the second. I think it'd been a strong consideration. I liked him there.
And while I'm doing the I told you so things, I mean, there were loads I got wrong. There were absolutely loads I got wrong, but I like to, the ones I landed on well. Davis Mills, he landed at the Texans. He's made himself into a really good starter there. And I said we should have drafted him. I wanted us to draft him last year as Stafford's long-term successor, obviously before we knew he was getting traded. But, there was no buzz about him. I really liked him, and he's gone to a team that's been, well, it had no talent on it last year. It still managed to win 4 games, and he looked really good. I think, he's had a really good year, and I think he's going to cement himself as a starter in years to come. He went round 3. That was hugely good value for the Texans. They were lucky to get him there, but I could see that we're going to be really good.
I think it's quite fun to pick out guys that you like. One you got right, one you got wrong. So like one that I definitely got wrong, Nick Bolton, I really soured on during the process. He had a really strong year for Kansas City. He was a guy that I didn't really want to see anywhere near the Lions. Dropped all the way to the end of the second, and he's done a really good job for them. Odigizua for the Cowboys. He had a really good Senior Bowl week, which is the only reason I bring it up. He looked really, really good in those one-on-ones. He kind of raised his stock during that process and ended up having a really good year as well. So I think with a lot of the Senior Bowl buzz, a lot of it can be exactly that. You get very excited by certain people in that kind of very small world of Mobile, Alabama. And then actually when push comes to shove, they can be just a guy. Odigizua is someone who really kind of stood out last year and did very well for the Cowboys.
I hear you there, Tom. And I'll hold my hands up. I was going crazy about him the entire draft process. I was mad as all hell when the Falcons took him just before we did in the second round. Richie Grant had a really bad year. I think he got a forced fumble and 1 pass breakup, and that was about it. I don't know whether they're not utilizing him properly or not, but everybody knows how crazy I was about him at the time, and he's done very little there with the Falcons, and screw them for wasting him. They should have let him fall to us. So what can I say? I'm wrong occasionally. I was really wrong there. It was disappointing. I did hope he would do really well, but so far it's not happened. But you can't be right every single time.
2 guys for me. One that I was really sold on. I think everyone was really sold on him, so I'm not going to get any W's for actually calling this. But Merrick, the safety, he obviously fell to, middle of the second. Raiders took him, and he was a bright spark in their defense. But one guy that I was super high on compared to everyone else, and I was completely wrong, was Jalen Mayfield, the tackle turned guard at Atlanta, who actually has a fairly good AV by Pro Football Reference, but he was absolutely shocking all year. So yeah, I was wrong on that. He's a project. It'll come good.
Is this something? I just want to say there's a joint win for me and Ryan. We both said Anthony Schwartz was going to suck big time at the Browns, and suck big time he did. He's just speed. That's literally it. So he's there. Quinn Miners, he had a really good year with the Broncos. Quinn Miners, obviously he was another one I mentioned a lot last year. The way he trained, the way he played hard. He looked really good there. He played well against us. I know that much. The Broncos got a good pick up there. But I think if you're looking really far back, into this draft. Obviously, one of the big picks that stands out was the 49ers. They picked up Elijah Mitchell in the 5th, and he's starting running back there now. He's had a hell of a good year for them. They really landed on a good pick there with him, especially with Mostert being out injured. I think they've got fantastic value for him. I think it was the back end of the 5th they got him as well.
Not even that. Sixth.
Oh, was it 6th?
194.
I won that. Yeah, of course. So 6th round, and they found themselves a starting caliber running back who's had a hell of a year. They seem to do really well with their running backs and later on in drafts.
All right, so let's turn to the value then, the chart that I've created. And I don't know whether you guys actually have it up. If you don't, then perhaps don't leave it up, and I can kind of quiz you guys on perhaps who you think have been the best value picks here. And then we'll have a look at the first round in particular, because I think that's where it gets interesting. But if you think about this chart, everyone in the latter rounds who's actually producing something good for you is going to produce maximum value. The value in the draft is hitting massively in the lower rounds. So with that in mind, perhaps pick out some names from who you think make up some of the top 20 names. I've adjusted for games played, where I've not allowed less than 5, and I've adjusted for AV not allowing less than 4. So no real big value guys because they played one game as a round 7 guy and produced massively for that one game. These are guys that have played and guys produced. Who do you think are the biggest value picks in the 2021 NFL draft?
I've just mentioned, I'll put him in again, Elijah Mitchell.
Elijah Mitchell, number 3 in the NFL draft in value.
How about Trey Smith?
Number 1. Trey Smith,
yeah.
round 6, 226th pick for Kansas City, and formed part of a fantastic rookie offensive line class for the Chiefs.
See, I've been hearing loads of good things about Thomas Graham from the Bears. They took him late. Is he up there?
I haven't got him as part of my analysis. So, let's see why. Taquan Graham, is this?
No? Oh God, where is it?
Thomas Graham, Chicago. He had an average value of 4, but it doesn't say. No, sorry, games played 4.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah, 4 games played, no average value. He hasn't played. Really.
In that case, I'll go to another corner who did well. Trey Norwood, the Steelers cornerback. He's got to be up there.
I don't see him either.
What?
I
swear Trey Norwood's had a pretty decent year with the Steelers.
Average value.
Am I thinking of the right
2.
one?
Average value of 2.
Hey, how about we're going to come on to talk about the Super Bowl, but future Super Bowl MVP Evan McPherson.
Ooh, that's a good shout. I don't have him on there either. It must be another thing that...
He's kicking them to the Super Bowl.
McPherson, average value of 4.
Disgraceful.
Disqualifies him.
Thomas?
Sorry, no, I beg your pardon. He is in there. He is in there. I've missed him. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm blind. Sorry, 11th on the chart. Sorry, Ryan.
Ambry Thomas, the 49ers corner. He had a pretty good year at times, I think. I think he was drafted this year.
Ambry Thomas. I'm pretty sure he was, but... Ambry Thomas, 102, average value of 2. So disqualifier. Some suggestions in the chat. Dan says the Sun God. Amon-Ra St. Brown is number 12 in value in the NFL.
I assume that's because he was taken slightly higher than guys like Trey Smith.
Yeah, so he was the fourth rounder on this list.
What about Hufanga, the 49ers safety? He's had a few picks, I believe.
Hufanga doesn't appear on my list.
Yeah.
Average value of 2. Once again, picking people who have produced, just not enough to appear here.
How about the 2? So these are, I think, both 4th rounders, or maybe one was a 5th rounder. But Michael Carter, Ramondre Stevenson, 2 running backs who were fantasy relevant.
Ramondre Stevenson was... I can't count fast enough. I really can't. 5, 10... He's 2 after Amon-Ra St. Brown. So 15th, 16th, and Michael Carter's 1 after that.
We must be missing some really obvious people then, because I feel like we haven't named many of the top 10.
No, you really haven't.
So, safety. Hang on. Caden Stearns?
I'm just searching up for a couple of suggestions by Ash. He said Nate Hobbs, and he's
hang on. Has anyone said Kenneth Gainwell? He must be on there.
So Nate Hobbs, average value of 3, Ash, so he doesn't appear. Who did you say, sorry?
Gainwell, the Philly running back.
Gainwell is number 8.
Woo!
Nice.
Fifth round pick.
Khalil Herbert, Bears running back.
No, not on the list. Ash has said Royce Newman. Royce Newman is number 6 on the list, the guard.
Tackle.
Guard tackle. Listed as a guard on Pro Football Reference. Shall I put you out your misery for some of these?
Please.
Number 2 is a defensive end. Round 7.
Which team?
Broncos.
Jonathan Cooper.
Jonathan Cooper. Sneaks in on average value of 4, but because he was one of the last people taken in the draft. It's a really good...
Did he have that good a year? Was he our highest day?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
I didn't see anything this year.
I mean, it's just he just did enough to appear in the list on the qualifiers, but was taken so low that he qualified that it is high average value. Number 4, round 6, Houston defensive lineman.
Houston defensive lineman. I can't think.
No, I've got nothing.
What year was Blacklock?
No, he was. I think it was 2 years ago. I think.
So that player was Roy Lopez of Houston.
I don't think I've ever heard of.
No, never got that.
5th cornerback at the New York Jets, pick number 200. Ash Soden got Roy Lopez in the chat just before I revealed it, which is insane.
Wait, was he Googling based on the info? He's like 6th round. Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
Wait, didn't the Jets, they took 2 Michael Carters, didn't they? Didn't they take the corner Michael Carter as well?
They might have done, but it's not this one.
Oh.
Brandon Eccles.
No.
Yeah.
So we mentioned Royce Newman. The next guy, Atlanta defensive lineman, didn't produce a huge amount, but Adetokunbo
Ogundeji.
Yeah.
Ogundeji, yeah. He was actually a guy I really liked coming out of the Senior Bowl last year.
Shall we round out the rest of the top 10? You've got Kenneth Gainwell next. Offensive lineman for Pittsburgh, round 4.
Oh, that's the God. Pittsburgh guard. What's he called? Is it Dan Moore? Tackle.
Dan Moore, yeah. Excellent shout. And finishing up, top 10 spots, cornerback out at Arizona.
Not the one they took in the first round.
Round 4, pick 136. Someone I kind of liked, but not enough to say I really wanted him. A name you definitely know.
Oh, was it the Florida guy? It was a Florida guy, wasn't it?
Pretty sure Florida. He's Florida, yeah.
Oh, Marco.
Wilson.
There we go. Marco.
He did it through his shoe.
Just rounding out now the top 20 then. So we said Evan McPherson 11, Amon-Ra 12, Chuba Hubbard was next, Ramondre Stevenson, Michael Carter, Baron Browning, the linebacker at Denver, Brandon Stevens, the cornerback, Spencer Brown, the offensive lineman at Buffalo, Ernest Jones, the linebacker at the Rams, Quinn Miners, the center at Denver. You get your first round 2 guy in Creed Humphreys at this point. going down to round 1, I've already mentioned that Rousseau was the best value round 1 pick. Then Micah Parsons. Who's the next first rounder?
Gotta be Slater, surely. For value.
There are 2 more
Najee
picks.
Harris?
Najee Harris is next.
Because
What?
he just produced so much, though, didn't he? And he
Yeah.
was a late first, so...
Yeah, Najee Harris, and there's 1 more until Slater.
Oh,
This is more a
Peyton
function...
Turner.
No, Peyton Turner one of the lowest in all of it.
Newsom?
This is a function of how the AV works on Pro Football Reference as much as anything else. Think about what contributes value.
Is it a quarterback? Mac Jones?
Mac Jones. Because he contributed so much considering his position. It's a kind of interesting thing to see. Who's the lowest second rounder who qualifies?
As in delivered the least value?
Delivered enough value to be on the list, but the least value of these people. Like, just enough.
Levi?
Was that a question? Oh, hang on. What?
Yeah,
Oh, right.
who produced just enough value to make the list? Elijah Moore from the Jets.
Okay, I loved Elijah Moore
I
coming out.
loved Elijah Moore too. Yeah, the least value pick, as I mentioned, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, then Jalen Waddle. Because the pick is worth so much.
Fine,
And they contributed it to a guy who probably achieved as a pick 6 needs to achieve. Like, he just kind of met expectation at that level. Because really, at pick 6, you want to get the best non-quarterback in the draft, which he wasn't.
Wait, he didn't produce that much less than Chase, though, did he? He got over 1,000 yards himself.
So Waddle has an AV of 7 versus Chase's 13. They think that Chase contributed almost double in value, what they define as value.
What about Devontae Smith? Because I would have thought Waddle had a better year than Smith, and obviously Smith is only a couple behind him.
4 picks less. They thought Smith contributed at a rate of 10 versus 7.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think the idea is that I'm not quite 100% on it, but I think the idea of value in this sense is that Smith contributed more wins to his team compared to Waddle.
So where did Pitts land then in terms of value?
4th worst.
Oh, that's not surprising.
5th worst, going up from worst picks then.
Alex Leatherwood's got to be worse, surely.
Elijah Vera Tucker, Jamin Davis, Penei Sewell, Justin Fields, Patrick Surtain, Jalen Phillips, Rashad Bateman. It's all a function of where you're picked in terms of the value, though, because the thing is, at the end of the day, Sewell's a premium pick, is worth 1,500 points. Whereas if you have a look at someone like Darasaur at 23, he contributed less, but his pick is worth half as much, according to the chart. So
that seems weird.
But the thing is, if you could get 2 Darasaurs for the value of a Sewell, and you didn't have any tackles,
you still wouldn't get the value you would have on Sewell. One
know.
Sewell is worth 2 Darasaurs.
it's an
Leatherwood gave
interesting.
up 70 pressures, like 6 positions less than him. How is he
Yeah,
not as
I know.
bad?
The really damning thing about Alex Leatherwood is he doesn't. Oh, hang on, sorry, no, Leatherwood is there. Beg your pardon, I thought he didn't qualify. He had a bigger AV than Penei Sewell.
That's why I like using the eye test. That's rubbish. That is absolute codswallop, as we say here in Britain. He's the worst first round pick by a long, long way.
Whoa, calm down. Yes, I thought that would be a good way to finish because it get you back up. Right, enough of that because that's a thought experiment gone too far, perhaps. Let's move on to Brad Holmes and how our GM has done through 1 year. I've just released my article looking back at Brad Holmes, so you can have a look at that on WillOfTheLionsUK.com. But having a look at free agency, the draft, the pickups through the year, the trades he's executed, what do you make of how he's done so far? And if we start with trades, there were 3 in the year. Stafford to the Rams for a 2021 third, 2022 and 2023 firsts, and quarterback Jared Goff. Trade 2 was defensive end Michael Brockers from the Rams for a 2023 7th. Trade number 3, wide receiver Trinity Benson from the Broncos for a 2022 5th and 7th, with the 2023 6th coming back. What do you make of Brad Holmes' trades so far?
Well, if I had to give them a grade, I would give the Stafford trade an A-, because I like the fact that he let Stafford have a good say in his destination. I've heard all this, well, if we took the Carolina pick, we also get what's his face, Parsons and Sewell. That's all hypothetical. I'm not buying into that. Like, they were like, all these trades were often like Teddy to like Denver and that. Like, we don't want that crap. I'm fine taking on Jared Goff's big contract for the 2 first-round picks, because that means we can be big players in the next 2 drafts. And I was fine sending him there. And I was fine that he now gets somewhere that he's happy. For me, everyone's saying who's the winner and the loser. There is no winner and loser in that trade for me. I'd say after what we've seen this year, I'd say those trades have balanced out pretty damn well. We've got good capital and a quarterback who will hold down the fort. That's what I'll say. Goff will hold down the fort. Stafford might win a Super Bowl. So I'm fine for that extra, 31 this year, 25 next year. I'm willing to take the cap on board. Michael Brockers, I'd give that a B-. I think he's a good veteran. He was stepped up and was able to put an arm on the likes of Aleem, McNeil, and Levi, who have had growing pains, but that was to be expected. I think they'd have looked a lot worse if they were just thrown out there with someone without Brockers there. He's been a healthy scratch at times, but he's been a solid, valuable presence there. And he was basically a throwaway one. Wasn't he a 7th-round pick? Something like that. So he was basically free. So that was the first time Holmes showing us he's got good connections. Like, say, a veteran willing to leave to come to a project, says that people believe in him. And Trinity Benson, I'll give that a D-. I'll be amazed if he's here next year, even though Holmes has said it's a 2022 thing. I'm not buying it. Don't think he'll be here next year.
It's a generous grade, that.
Oh, yeah. Like I say, I'm not going to talk shit on him, but if I had to hedge my bet, I'd say Darrell Hodge has got a much better chance of being here next year than Trinity Benson, and that's without having to give up capital for him. So overall, I would give the trades a B- as a collective. I'd say he's done pretty well on that front.
GM, you want your GM to get the big trades right. It doesn't matter about some of these throwaway receivers or that, but you need to get the big ones right. And he got the big one right. As Ryan's already mentioned quite well, we're set up for the next 2 drafts with the capital. We've already got Iffy from this trade, who is potentially a starting corner for us. So we're already seeing the returns on it. And Stafford got to go somewhere where he gets to win. It was a win-win for both teams. We can't moan about that. And anyone who says we should have taken the Panthers one, again, as Ryan said, is talking out their arse. They're just looking it up on hindsight now. We'd have lost, we'd have nothing left from that trade now if we'd have taken it, except Teddy's huge contract and the players we got. We'd have no help in this draft, no help in the next draft. So, we've got an unbelievable amount of value for him here, and it's going to put us in really good stead just when we need it as well. These next 2 drafts are critical, and we've got extra ammunition now to work in them, give Holmes the best chance to succeed. So as long as my GM is getting the big calls right, that's fine. Brockers, I like the Watt trade as well. I think he's going to be invaluable for the younger guys around him, especially if another one comes in the draft this year. He provides good veteran leadership. And now that Hick Dilliams isn't going to be here next season, we should be able to see him alongside these talented rookies instead of having that useless lump of coal next to him. So I think we'll see better play there. And Benson, we'll see if he comes good next year. He does. I mean, they managed to make something out of Darrell Hodge, which we all thought was impossible. So if they can do it with him, they can do it with anybody. I think you've got to give it another year before you really write it off. But the value is that little in it that it doesn't really matter. So
just to quickly throw out a big thanks to Derek Bobarak in the Twitch chat for gifting out a sub. It's the second gifted sub since we got our Twitch status. Thanks, man. Really appreciate your support. Sorry, Tom.
Legend. Love that. So basically agree with what both of you said. I think the Benson piece, let's assume he doesn't do anything from here. Firstly, I think when the deal was done, The Denver guys are pretty sad to see him go. So yeah, it hasn't worked, but it's not like this was an out of nowhere trade and everyone thought he was worth nothing. And Holmes just said, no, I think I know better than everyone else. So there's that side. And then if you actually look at the compensation, so it was a 5th and a 7th. And then in return, we got a 23-6th, I think. So you basically balance out the 23-6th and the 7th rounder and just say they're the same because you normally lose a round for if it's a year later. So we spent a 5th round pick on Trinity Benson. Hasn't worked out so far. I don't have the guys that were drafted in the 5th round receivers from the draft that we were just talking about. I don't know, Matt, if you've got them up, but I can't imagine there was many hits at receiver in the 5th round this year. So
I've got you, Tom.
Say again?
I've got you when you're ready.
So yeah, it's one of those where, and I'm definitely guilty of this as well because I love draft picks. But not every 5th rounder turns into Megatron is basically the takeaway here. And actually we would have just as likely been spending that 5th rounder on a position where it hasn't delivered value because they are effectively dart throws at that stage. So yeah, the Benson trade hasn't worked, but as you mentioned, it's about getting the big ones right and taking educated gambles with some of your lower capital. Who are the receivers? I'm intrigued now.
There's only 3 of them. Emir Smith-Marset went to the Vikings and obviously did very little behind the 2 they've got there. Simi Fehoko, the Stanford guy, he went to Dallas. I've not seen much of him there. And then Cornell Powell, the Clemson wide receiver, went to the Chiefs, and he's not done out there either.
So there you go. I mean, I'm not saying that those 3 are never going to do anything in their careers either, but they're 5th rounders for a reason. And the fact that we spent one on Trinity Benson, it just doesn't bother me that much in the grand scheme of things.
No. At the end of the day, my biggest takeaway when I looked at this again is people are kind of assuming that trades are a zero-sum game, and they're just not. Like, it's not like if I win by 2 points, you lose by 2 points. That's not how this works. So it's very possible for both teams to lose a trade. It's very possible for both teams to win a trade. If you have a look at what happened, the LA Rams absolutely win this trade. They've got a quarterback who's elevated that team, who has made some bad decisions through the season sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's undoubtable that he's made that team far better and maybe was the last piece to get them to the point that they're currently at, which is favourites for the Super Bowl. And it's partially down to what they've done with that. The Lions have also won this trade in a big, big way. I mean, if you think about where the team was, there's no way with Stafford in this team the Lions were challenging for a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. But it's perfectly possible that Stafford actually does retire in the next 2 years. He's accumulated a lot of injuries over his career, and to his credit, he's played through a lot of them. But what happens when he takes one really bad hit? And that could just be him done. And aside from the injury risk, if he wins a Super Bowl, he might look at his wife and say, actually, with what's happened over the years, I want to spend as much time with you as possible. And he might just change his mind. I mean, he left Detroit because he didn't want to be here anymore. But part of me thought that he stopped loving the game as much as he had done and went to the Rams to try and rekindle that. Now, he's doing really well, but what if the love for the game has gone? Like, there's so many factors that say a guy of his age might not be around forever, but our draft picks will be here 7 years after he's gone if they're first rounders. Like, you can't put a price on that. Our Super Bowl window is opening because Stafford left. We could win one in the next 5 years. You have a look at what the Bengals did in 4 from their first overall pick, or whatever it's been. Like, our window opens because of this trade, and so both sides have won. And that's the really important takeaway. And it's perfectly possible for it to happen.
I completely agree. We've got to hit on those picks. So I remember the Browns of the last 5 years or so, the amount of times where they traded out of picks and got capital, and it always looked like a good trade. And then they go and waste the picks. So if Brad Holmes then goes and creates value out of these picks we've got, then 100%. I think the only criticism you can say is if we look back in 18 months and we've got through the draft and we're like, I'm not sure that this has delivered the value that we were hoping, or 3 years' time, suddenly those guys, we don't actually have kind of good starters out of them, then we take another look. But yeah, as we stand now, it's all looking good for both parties.
But what the Bengals have also done, they invested wisely in free agency. I mean, obviously last year, the big one, they went out and got Trey Hendrickson, who's transformed that pass rush. Yeah, it's amazing. And they got good value for him. So, you know, you need to land on your draft picks, but you also need to spend wisely in free agency to get those right guys. That's what it's there for. There to get those guys who are going to put you over the edge and into the playoffs, deep down into them. And that's what Hendrickson's doing for those. And that's what we need to think about this year. We have a little bit of money available to us. And if the right guy is out there, then we need to go out there and get him to supplement all this young talent that we've got. Because, as I said at the beginning, we do need some good vet guys here as well. Not just vets at the end of their career, but ones who are in their prime. And there are a lot of good players out this year who are young enough, but experienced enough to come here and join us if we do it right.
I agree on the fact as well that a lot of football players are happy to put their family life on hold. Stafford isn't that guy. I give him 3 years max, so I think he'll be done, depending on what happens on Sunday. It was his birthday today. What was he today? Was he 33 or 34?
34.
34. I give him by 37. I say he's retired. Like I say, he's got the kids. He's got, say, Kelly. He'll want to spend time with them. He won't wait till he's broken to do it. He'll be one of those guys that once he retires, he won't come back again. There'll never be that grey area like Rivers that could step in at the next minute. Like I say, once he's gone, he's gone. And I agree. Like I say, there's free agencies coming up soon. I've circled, like I say, speaking of the Bengals, if Tracy Walker's not coming back, I pray Jesse Bates hits the market. I would love Jesse Bates, but I know they're going to tag him. He's going to get tagged.
Yeah, of course.
He's getting a big payday. But yeah, there's got a lot of players to watch on Sunday that are pending free agents that may not return.
All right, let's move on to free agency. And there's a number of guys that I've picked out here, good and bad, pre-draft and through the season. So let me just run down some of these guys. I've only picked ones that I kind of feel matter in some regard. I rank them by contract value, not average value, but contract value. So tops by Jamal Williams, 2 years, $6 million. Tyrell Williams, 1 year, $4 million. Quarterback Tim Boyle, 1 year, 2.4. Alex Anzalone, 1 year, 1.75. Charles Harris, 1 year, 1.75 million. Randy Bullock, the kicker, 1 year, 1.75 million. Darren Fells, 1.2. All the rest 1 year. Dean Marlowe, 1.1. Quinton Dunbar, 1.1. Khalif Raymond, 1.1. Nicole Robbie Coleman, 1.1. Craig Reynolds, $850,000. Then the next guys, I haven't listed a contract value, but they were in-season pickups, mainly off the waiver wire, but some were true free agents as well. Kadarrell Hodge, the wide receiver, and Josh Reynolds, the wide receiver. Zane Zylstra, the tight end. Centre Ryan McCollum. Linebacker Josh Woods. Defensive end Jesse Lemonnier. Lemon, I have no idea how to say his name still. Linebacker Curtis Bolton. Defensive end, outside linebacker, tight end fullback Rashad Berry. And kicker Riley Patterson. If I kick this off, my thoughts on all of these guys, all of these pickups, is the average value for none of them was above $4 million a year, with only one getting to that level. Only two guys above $2.5 million average. If you have a look at the guys being picked up for that contract value, there's almost no one there a hit. Like, there's so few people being picked up for that sort of money who are really good NFL contributors. So my expectation looking at these contract values is we've picked up in that list something in the region of 20 players. So 2/5 of a roster. I want 2 big hits and I want 2 minor hits out of the 20 because they're just being paid so little that if any of them contribute as a win, and I'm not looking at any of these guys thinking I need that player to win, because my expectation of them having those hits is mainly an accumulation of players and just raw lottery hits at some point, rather than that guy has to win and that guy has to win. And I think maybe if I transport myself back, I maybe thought Tyrell Williams was the only guy I was like, this guy must hit for us to be successful, and obviously that didn't happen. But for the rest of them, it's more just a vain hope that something happens here. And if you have a look at what actually did happen, if you have a look at the big hits, I think you have 2. I think you have Charles Harris and you have Riley Patterson. If you have a look at minor hits, there's loads of them. Jamal Williams is at worst a minor hit, I would say. I think in terms of first down rushes for first down, he was one of the best in the league. You have a look at Dean Marlowe, contributed very well when he actually came down the stretch at safety when he was asked to start. Khalif Raymond, flash, especially early on before we got Josh Reynolds. Craig Reynolds did very well. Actually got signed at the end of the year from just being elevated from the practice squad. Josh Reynolds obviously did well. I thought that Josh Woods looked really good when he took the red dot for a couple of games. There's a few in there that did really, really well. There's also some who did really, really badly. I didn't mention, Alexander Zaloni, who I thought probably did well for 1.75 million. If you have a look at people who perhaps didn't do well for that value, I think Tim Boyle has to be up there. Sorry, a lot of backups are on there for vet minimum, and you were on double that, and just didn't make it happen. As much as his parents are lovely, having met them in Detroit, but Randy Bullock obviously busted out very quickly. Dunbar didn't even turn up, or he was in practice for a little bit and then had to go away with his personal issue. Roby Coleman was paid a lot to sit on the practice squad and do nothing. I don't know. On balance, I'd say that given the expectation of where they were at and the reality of what happened, although it may seem disappointing that we didn't get more bar Charles Harris outside of special teams, that it outperformed the expectations that should have been allowed for these guys, given how much they were paid. What do you guys think?
I think he did incredibly well in the circumstance. You don't forget Brad Holmes is a victim of circumstance here. He had to get all these cheap deals in because we had no money. You know, the previous regime didn't leave him any, and all the debt that was coming his way because of all the bad contracts he had. He's had to take punts on more players than he usually would do. We're not going to see this many players come in on one-year deals again. And as you say, it was all about the value that you get for them and the hits you land on them. And it's about trying to find pieces for the future. And you have found pieces. You've mentioned Harris. Harris absolutely deserves to come back. He's one of the biggest success stories all season out of anybody, to be fair. I mean, he's just had an amazing season here. Williams, it's not his fault. He got injured. And yes, we could say he's got injury history, but there's not really a lot you can do with that. But, you know, Raymond's had a really good year, as you said. Marlowe, I think for 1 million, he's had a damn good year as a safety. I know we didn't really highlight him out that much, but I think he's played pretty damn well in the circumstances. And then you've got guys who've come in who've found a place there. Lemonnier has come in, had a few decent games, had a few good plays out there and played well. You say Patterson's been brought in. He might have solved our kicker problem there. You know, Hodges come in and got better. Reynolds gave this offense a new, dynamic going forward. And, both of those are potential pieces in the wide receiver core going forward. There are 5, 6, maybe 7 guys who might put in roster spots next year and be good at what they do. The rest, none of them are costing us anything. They've not put the rebuild in jeopardy. That's what this whole thing was about, a 1-year deal to see if they can prove themselves. And if they can't, no harm, no foul. We move on to the next. So I think he's done remarkably well in the circumstance. People will highlight the bad ones, but I think you've got to look at the good ones. I think he's found some really good guys there. So I'm not going to moan. The situation he was put in meant that we were going to get some bad ones. It was just inevitable. So I'm not going to hold that against him. And what he's found was really good in the circumstances. So I think he's done really well.
I was disappointed by Darren Fells. He looked lazy. He looked disinterested at times. And ultimately, he gave up. He has to leave. Like you say, he just showed frustration. So I was glad we got rid of him when we did. And I'm glad he cost us very little because he turned out to be more of a hindrance than actual help at times. Like I say, he seemed like someone that didn't think we'd be as bad as we were to start the season. And it seems like he dropped his head very quickly, complained about the lack of targets. So I was glad he was gone and he didn't turn out to be an expensive mistake. So it was someone I was glad to see the back of ultimately. But no, there's a lot of guys there. As you mentioned, Josh Woods, good special teamer. He stepped in when the likes of Anzalone and that got hurt. Like I say, he was part of that rotation. He was quite highly thought of when Chicago had him. Josh Reynolds, you mentioned, he was a spark. The first game back wasn't great, but then the second, third, fourth, like I say, they realised quickly that Goff looks like he needs a buddy, lack of confidence. So they brought in someone to help with him and they got that connection going quickly. So I think he was crucial, like I say, across a 3-4 week stretch. So he was perfect value for money. Khalif Raymond, I still think he's got a future here potentially. He's a 4 or 5 guy as a returner as well. He was pretty valuable in the kickoffs and got us some decent position. he looked like tearing off the odd kick. So there weren't many misses in that pile. And as you mentioned, as a collective, they cost little to nothing. Like say, we took a lot of 1 year flyers. You kind of like say throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. And a few of them stuck. Like I say, not many of them stunk. So you can't really complain when we're working with bare bones that we picked up a lot of. We went to like a rescue centre, collected a few strays, and some of them have found a home.
And the guys that didn't find a home in that metaphor, which will continue. If you look at Darren Fells, for example, that opened the door for Brock Wright and Shane Zylstra to a degree, the guys to come through. And especially, you mentioned Dunbar and Roby Coleman. I mean, if they hit to a degree and they provide depth pieces, we're in the same situation a couple of years down the line because they're not really fixes. Whereas now we've seen Jerry Jacobs come through, we've seen Iffy come through, we've seen guys get reps on the outside because the free agents that we brought in didn't step up. So I think in terms of the long-term health of our roster, getting those young guys experience has been great. The only thing I'd really pick a little is, and I agree on Dean Marlowe as a third safety and as a guy who can contribute to the roster, he did well for very low money. I would have liked to see a little bit more investment in the safety position. I think it left us with few options. But when you go bargain shopping, you can only get so much, right? So all in all, I'd say pretty good.
All right.
Matt Gilbert. He was an in-season pickup, and he was pretty good for those few games once healthy. So I imagine he cost little to nothing.
Yeah, I think that's the big challenge for Holmes in year two now. He was never going to be able to fix every position last year. It just wasn't going to happen. As Tom mentioned, their safety got ignored. Linebacker did for the most part. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how he goes about fixing those now, putting those guys in there. So that'll be his big challenge. But year one, I think he's been very successful. We found a lot of players, I think, that we didn't think were going to be here in future years. You just got to look at AJ and Jerry. You look at AJ and Jerry. That's two players there who, you know, no one thought was going to get there. And that's two roster spots filled next year with good players. You know, we've done really damn well this year, and I think we've sped up the rebuild. If we can get the elite guys in now, really hit on these high draft picks and the good free agency guys, we're going to have a good team sooner rather than later.
Quickly, guys, put in the comments, who would we sign Anzalone? Should we bring Anzalone back, do we all think, or should we just draft a guy?
So I wouldn't. The reason being, I would rather bring Jalen Reeves-Maybin back. And Anzalone's done a fantastic job for this year, but I think now is the logical time to move on, get Derek Barnes some more snaps, obviously hopefully bring someone else in with a bit more upside and youth in there. So I personally wouldn't.
If you give him the same money again, what was it, $1.75 million?
It's nothing, yeah.
I think I'd take that again, just because he is the leader in there. He's the guy who can give that experience. You know, he's got the green dot experience, doing all that sort of stuff. I think he could be valuable to the rookies. It depends what you do at linebacker. If you go and splash on one in free agency, then obviously you don't. But I think even if you bring JRM back and you draft a guy, you're still lacking that kind of really senior guy in there to keep it all together. And that's the issue we had in years gone by. Collins was just a lazy bum who didn't do it, but Anzalone seemed to take to task more. So it depends what they do outside of that. But if they give him the same money again, I'd quite happily take him back.
Comments from several people, but the overriding one is by Ash, which kind of agrees with some of you guys too. JRM and draft. And the thing for me is that the linebacker draft class this year is so deep. There's potential really good starters in rounds 3 and 4. But I just don't see any need to bring Alex back, apart from, as Ant says, the fact that there's then no senior leader in that room. I kind of think that's made up for by our coaches and the fact that they're going to get elite training in there. I believe in those coaches, and I think that they could make up for a lack of leadership in that room potentially. But
or they're still young enough to play.
I mean, technically, JRM's a vet at this point. And, you know, he took the green dot for 1 or 2 games this year when Anzalone was injured, and I thought he did very well in those games. So,
well, he's not a vet who gets you to the playoffs. I love him, but you don't want him as your vet guy in your linebacker room when you're making a playoff push.
No, maybe not. But I would say
people
the same
will laugh.
And people will laugh. Same of Anzalone too.
That's true, but if you've surrounded him with high-level rookies, I think the conversation changes a little bit there. Especially if it's a good coverage guy. We need a coverage linebacker like they're going out of fashion. We've not had one in years.
If we can start with with Reeves Mabin and Chad Mummer or something, and have Barnes as the third guy rotating in for either one, I think that would be quite good.
Bring a rookie in front of Barnes?
I don't think Barnes showed enough to say that unless he develops massively in the off-season, could take first-team reps. Just don't think so.
Here comes the draft discussion, I assume.
It's not that. I don't know. If you are all right, though, about, you said about blooding your rookies next year. If you're going to blood the rookies in some areas, then Barnes needs to be the rookie that you're blooding, not JRM. And if you get another rookie in as well, then you're sort of struggling for. I don't know. I just feel like if Barnes does well, he needs to be the one getting the snaps next year, just like Levi needs the snaps next year.
If he does well, yeah, I think if someone comes in and takes this, I mean, you look at with the Cowboys, obviously Parsons is Parsons, but he knocked Van Der Esch and other people who had been there a year or two back in the pack. And I think if someone comes and lights it up and Barnes goes to linebacker 3, then he deserves to. Do we expect someone who's a kind of mid to late day 2 pick or even a 4th rounder to come and take his place straight away? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, Barnes, we were so high on in the preseason, and I definitely kind of fell wildly in love, head over heels, and then he didn't really step on that with what we all wanted. So we're going to need to see positive steps.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to the last part, and I, for my sins, didn't consider the UDFA class. I'm only looking at draftees. I should have, and we can talk about it here. But just to recap the draft once again, round 1, Penny Sewell, 2, Levi Onwuzurike, 3 was Ali McNeil and Afati Melifonwu, round 4 was Amon Russell Brown, Derek Barnes, round 7, Jamar Jefferson. Then the notable UDFAs, those 2 cornerbacks you've already mentioned, AJ Parker. And why have I forgotten his name too? I'm catching the others. Jerry Jacobs, and then Brock Wright as well, I guess, the biggest.
Kramer.
Tommy Kramer, yes. So looking at expectation for this class versus reality, I'll start with you guys, so I'll come to what I think later. How do you think we drafted when you're looking back at it all versus what you expect from a player picked in that position?
I think we got the best, I think we've had the best of both so far. Well, not the best of both. We've had a bit of both, should we say. I think Sewell was obviously landed to every expectation we could have hoped for on both sides of the line. Obviously, it was a great pick. Great that he was there. I can say that now. So, he's done well. Obviously, McNeil's done well. He's got better as he's gone along. He's everything that I thought he was going to be. And he's just going to keep getting better and better, and he needs as many snaps as he can get in that interior defensive line next year. He's just going to be a hell of a player for us there. But I guess if you sandwich it on the outside, Levi and Barnes need to do a lot more. Obviously, Levi's had his injury. They talked about redshirting him, so maybe they've given him an excuse for this year, but he needs to start coming good next year. Because obviously, we've spent 2 picks on the defensive line last year. It's a big investment, and you do need to see a return on it, and we are quite short without him. So, he's going to need a big year. Barnes is going to need to step up more in the areas that he's not done so well in against the run. He's going to need to step up better because he can be better, much better than he has been in there. It's hard to make a judgment. He's flashed, but he's had injuries. That's not his fault, but he's looked good. He's looked like he's getting better. I think we've just had a little bit of everything, but I think, there's a good chance a lot of these guys can still be here in 5 years. It was one thing under Bob Quinn's tenure. His draft classes just vanish very, very quickly, and we keep very few of them past a pro deal. I think that, at least 3 or 4 of these guys are going to be here, come pro deal time. I think he's done better than not, but just some unfortunate circumstances for some of them. But, he's found some really good guys as well. And the undrafted free agency class is probably the best we've ever had. I'm going back, I can't think of that many undrafted free agents we've had who've come in and had the impact that they have this year.
I can't think of any significant UDFAs we've had in the last era.
No, I can't either.
No.
And, this was a big year when we needed to land on it. And he found a lot of guys in there, and there's still some of them hanging around. A lot of those UDFAs have got future steals for next year as well. And I know people say, oh, they're just future steals, but they obviously see something in some of these guys to warrant keeping them in. So I think that's where his greatest work has been done. But in terms of the draft picks themselves, I'm still confident we've had a really good draft. It's just a couple of them need to have good second years just to reinforce that.
Just one for Ash to research. What's the best UDFA that Bob Quinn had? And if you can do that while we're on the air, that'd be great, man. Thanks. Love you. What about the rest of you guys?
Yeah, so ultimately, Sewell, especially after that shaky start, looks fantastic. And that's the one that really matters out of all of these is with the number 7 pick, have you hit on something that you think is a franchise foundational piece? And I think the answer we can say for now is yes. So that's fantastic. Aleem McNeil was probably a top 5 defensive tackle. Is that fair to say? Amon-Ra St. Brown, probably a top 5 wide receiver. So we've got legitimate starters and not just starters on a team which is 3-13-1, guys that we want to take into the future. And I think when you add in then the contributions that we hope to get from, we got from AJ Parker this year, we got from Jerry Jacobs while he was healthy. We got from Iffy. Iffy was a project, and when he was on the field, he looked better than I thought he was going to. So whilst he was by no means perfect, I think again he's flashed. So there's a lot of positives there. I think Derek Barnes, the issue is the expectations. He just looked so good in preseason that all of us got so excited that we may have found our kind of star linebacker of the future. And then he just couldn't get it together on the field in year 1, but that's fine. He was a 4th round pick. And like I say, we expect more for next year. The only negatives I think for me on the draft class, because it's easy to go back and say, I thought this player was going to be good, was going to be bad. Like I wasn't particularly high on Levi, but I wasn't upset when we took him. My issue, and this actually came back to something we touched on briefly earlier, the Barnes trade, for example, we gave up our 4th, I think, for this year. But that's a pretty high pick. That's 2 picks outside of being a 3rd rounder to go up and get him, as well as obviously the 5th round value. So my slight hesitation is with some of the aggression. And when Holmes talked about Sewell, he was like, I was thinking about going up to 4 or 5 and calling people to see if I can move up. With Levi, if you remember, he was thinking about trying to get up into the 1st round. And with Barnes, obviously, he then did go and do it. So I would love to hold on to that pick this year. But all in all, I think it's been a really, really solid first draft class. And especially, like I say, when you throw in the UDFAs.
Ash has just answered he thinks that the best Bob Quinn UDFA, although technically he came via the Jets who signed him and cut him, is Kerry Hyder, who I think is a really good shout, who has done okay through his career. So if you think about Hyder, he hasn't done what our cornerbacks have done in 1 year, so in terms of production, personally. So there we go. Beat him in 1 year. Ryan, what do you make of the draft class?
I'm very happy with it. I feel sorry for Jefferson because I feel like he landed in the wrong team. He landed on a heavy depth chart. Like it wasn't his fault that he got picked by a team, and then you have likes of Godwin emerge. Craig Reynolds finally gets good, and suddenly finds himself at the bottom of the pile. So I know it's a 7th round throwaway, but I feel like I don't know where his place is. Like he's probably thinking like he has to have a big year next year. Like he's got to find some way to get on the field. And that's probably going to be special teams. I think he's got to try get himself mixed up in the return game next year if he wants to see those touches on the field. If we bring back the majority of these backs, which I expect we will. So I think he's got the hardest route to succeed. But also no expectations on him at all. I just feel sorry for him in that sense that if he'd have landed on a different team, maybe things would have got different. Maybe he'd have seen the field a little bit more. So the circumstances for him were unfortunate. Sewell is going to be a cornerstone player. Like we saw him, he can play wherever he wants. So it makes the future when you know he can swap sides or fill gaps. It makes you feel fine. Levi, we expected a good amount. And if you want to take the benefit of the doubt, he had the back injury. Like I say, he struggled at times. He took quite a while to grade himself in. I'll write the first year off, benefit of the doubt. But next year, we expect much more from him. Like next year, people will not be as sympathetic to his situation. Like I said, I'd expect him to take those snaps away from Brockers, who will probably ease himself away now. Let the young guy take the reins. So everything else in between was really good. Like I say, Liam McNeil showed us athletics. He's got good athleticism. He showed that he's able to get that penetration. He's strong in the middle. Got the sack, like I say, showed us attributes that we knew he would be. He's got that deceiving quickness and some good strength, so he's going to be a future piece. Iffy, despite the injury, like I say, we saw good matchups with DK and Devontae Adams where he certainly held his own at times, which is incredibly promising. Like I say, we saw his big, monstrous frame put to good use. Who knows? He still might have a future as, I don't know, a backer, a safety. Like I say, there's going to be a lot of things you can do with him. He's a hybrid, like that 6'3". Like, you don't have to pigeonhole into one spot. With next year, Okuda will start slowly. So there's a gap there if he wants to win it. So you might see him see the field next year. Could start as cornerback too. It would not surprise me. Amon-Ra, well, I think he was the third best receiver in this year's class. I think for the value of the pick, far surpasses what Waddle did for Miami. Like I say, with in this scenario as well. So he was an absolute star. An undrafted free class agent. I think Brock Wright could have a massive future next year. If he can take pressure off TJ Hawkinson and just get those people to respect him a little bit more and free each other up, I think those two could be quite a dynamic duo. If we see things that I want to see from him, we may not need a tight end too. We may already have him because from what I've seen the flashes, he has got an awesome athleticism and good top end speed as well. He showed flashes that he can win in a foot race. Like I say, he looks like he'll want a tight end to look. And blocking, he had some nice blocks as well. Like I said, just scrub up on that and I think he'll be just fine. So as a whole, actually a really good draft class. So let's do it again.
I completely agree, to be honest. My kind of thoughts on this in terms of expectation is, in an average draft class with Sewell at pick 7, you're looking at one of the maybe 2 or 3 top players in the class that aren't quarterbacks. And I think he absolutely delivered. I really, really do. I think that if you have a look at top non-quarterbacks, I'd be going Chase, Slater, Sewell. And Slater only gets that nod because he played left tackle throughout his college career and then started at left tackle. Like, Sewell played right tackle at high school, left tackle at college, did preseason at right tackle, then started at left tackle, then got shifted over to right tackle. Like, how do you expect this guy to get settled? Like, for me, Sewell had a more impressive year than Slater because of that adversity. Like, the difference between them was minor. And he performed just as well, or pretty close. Levi's obviously disappointing, but the kind of start that he had with the back injury really kind of negates that for me. Melifonwu is one of the most promising picks of the entire class. Like, for him to have preseason, look as he did at the very start of the year before getting injured, and then come back after that layoff and be able to perform like he did, especially against Devontae Adams. Like, it's so impressive as a rookie, as a raw rookie, to have that long a layoff and then get thrown into the fire and look passable to good is insane. His ceiling is so high, and I think people really underrate that. Amon-Ra is obviously fantastic, and the rest of the class, I mean, Aleem exceeded expectations from where he was picked. He's deservedly PFF's all-rookie nose tackle. And the rest of them, none of them have busted. My feeling is you want to have an above a 50% hit rate, and you don't want to call anyone a bust after year 1, which we've really suffered with, especially in the second round. Levi is not a bust yet. He's not deserving of it at all. Melifonwu, definitely not. Barnes, definitely not. And Jefferson can do it. We've seen the flashes. Every time he drops the ball, it looked like he was going to get a touchdown at some point in the middle of this season. So it just needs to be given a chance. But no one's busted, and we've exceeded expectations with the rest of the picks. So it's a great draft class. It just is.
And we're still going to see Jamar season next year. It's coming.
I think ESPN put our draft class at 7 this year. I think that's where we got ranked,
6th.
Which I think is very healthy. It's 6th, which is really good. I agree.
PFF had us 5th.
I think Jamar Jefferson should take Godwin snaps next year. Like I say, I think he will move up and eat into his snap count. So, like I say, I think next year we're stacked at running back. I see people drafting him in the mock drafts. I don't want us to touch a running back. Like just leave it be. let's rumble what we've got.
Yeah, did you see all the tweets going on about how much they love Damian Pierce? And you're just like, stop it now. Don't want
Prepare
any of
yourselves.
this.
I think it's happening.
We don't want it. Oh, not you as well, Tom.
No,
Not you as
hey,
well.
I'm not here for. I'm just saying. If you look at the history,
Speaking of history, I went back and looked at that question you asked, mate. You obviously said about Bob Quinn's best undrafted free agent.
Let's see what you say compared to Ash, because Ash has got a list of a few as well.
You are never going to guess the guy who I would say would be top. You are never going to guess. Absolutely not. And I feel dirty saying this because of the amount of crap I've given him over the years. But, you know, I'm looking at Matt Nelson. And I'm saying that fair. Because to find an undrafted free agent, he's not a starting tackle, but you very rarely find a starting tackle as an undrafted free agent, although someone might correct me on that, but I don't think you do. But he's played at left tackle pretty decently. I think he plays better there than he does at right tackle, but his invaluableness when he comes in as the sixth lineman in the jumbo packages, he really excels there. And, you know, he can play across the line. And I think that sort of versatility to find in a guy out of undrafted free agency is a pretty good deal. And I know I've given him rubbish over the years, but that's because I don't like him as a starter. He never will be a starter. But for me, he offers you very, you know, he's very vital when it comes to depth and when it comes to your special packages. So I would say that he's got a shot of doing that. No disrespect to Kerry Hyder, but I just think the value you've got from him is a lot better. Plus, he's still here and going.
So Ash has a list of guys, not necessarily guys who stuck with the team, but people just who appeared as UDFAs for the Lions over the years in that era. 2017, Robert Tonyan, which hurts just a little bit. 2018, Mike Ford. 2019, CJ Moore. 2020, Aaron Sipos.
CJ Moore's a good one.
My God, why did I not say that? That's it. Yeah, he's top one.
Yeah.
Sorry, Matt, you're second.
And I'd take that over Hyder as well, because Hyder, I think, didn't he play a year elsewhere first? If he'd come to us in his rookie year as a UDFA.
No, he came here. So the Jets signed him as UDFA straight after the draft, but then cut him almost straight away and he came here.
Okay, interesting. So he was a rookie the first year he was here. Interesting. But yeah, CJ Moore's been a stud as a special teamer. And obviously he's contributed in other ways as well, but hard to argue.
I'm pretty sure Hyder tore his ACL though, didn't he? Pretty sure that's what ended his career here. Like that was a rough end.
Yeah, it was. He was starting to play really, really well. Looked like he was going to re-sign, be a vet here, and that ended it.
Yeah, he got 8.5 sacks, I think. I think he was the one that surpassed Ziggy Ansah that year, didn't he? Then he got tore his ACL, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, that rounds up. Well, what should we do overall? What do we mark Brad Holmes overall then? We've looked at free agency, pickups pre and post draft, the draftees and the UDFA class and the trades. So take it all into account now. What is your overall grade for Brad Holmes year one?
Given the absolute clusterfuck he inherited and the fact that he lost his starting quarterback like straight out the gate, he had no money to work with. You know, he inherited the worst situation I reckon any GM's come across in years. To get us to where we are now in 1 year, I'd put him at an A-. I'd say he's done just about as good a job as he could have done. Otherwise, I don't think there's a lot more he could have done better, to be fair. I think he's had a terrific first year.
Yeah, I'd agree. A- is where my head was at as well. I think, again, you don't know how much you can attribute to his people he's brought in through all those various methods versus what the coaches did to get those guys up and running. But it's hard to fault what he's done in terms of setting us up for this year, I think. And like I say, the real grade will be when we look back in probably 2 more years' time and then make that assessment. But I think he's done a great job of setting us up for future success. Just got to go hit on those picks.
Yeah, and also not to mention he managed to keep a lot of the staff as well. Like I said, Juice Staley, Hank Fraley. He brought in a good special teams coordinator, so he kept up where Braden Coombs left off. So he made some good hires, brought in some good staff, like you say. So I'd say A- if it was a FIFA team, 4.5 stars. He couldn't have done much more with what he had to work with.
I think for me, I rated him B+ in all 3 aspects, but I think that adds up to A- overall. The thing is, so many teams are let down by being weak in one aspect. You can have a great draft and you can pick up people well through the year, but if your trades go wrong, it can just wreck the whole team. Likewise, if you draft badly but free agency goes well or vice versa, even in a minor way, that can sink the ship. And by being consistently good in all aspects, I think that it elevates the entire thing. So A- feels like a really good grade to me. I think that, is there room for improvement? Could we have picked a better second round player who performed in year 1? Could we have taken Traven Morig in round 2 instead of who we did take? Like that may have elevated this class far higher. But you never know. Like, you can always do better, but I think A- is fair.
I think the situation he inherited is what upgrades it. Like you say, maybe it is a B+ in everything, but I think because of the situation he was in, it merits an A- because he had everything stacked against him. No money, star players all left. It's a very hard situation at a historically bad franchise. And I think that just upgrades everything he's done, because he's just defying all expectations here. He's defying the norm. He's actually giving people hope for the future for the first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
Plus, he was willing to also admit mistakes, like Breshad Perryman. He didn't just let him stay here when we knew he was going to be a bad egg. He just said, "I know I've given you 1.25 million. You haven't done anything, but we're going to get rid of you." We got rid of Jamie Collins, even though we couldn't find the trade partner. We're just like, you can't stay because you're bringing everyone down. So it was pretty cutthroat. Fells, yeah, he got rid of him. So we were good in that he seems like he's going to be someone that won't take crap. He will make the hard decisions.
Yeah. I mean, even at the start of it, you had Don Muhlbach's retirement, and that was all kind of managed very well. And, then came back to the team as a coach. Like, even the little things all made sense. The little roster moves which happened that were clever, that added a kind of roster spot when we needed to, cut people to re-sign to the practice squad, then re-signed them back to the active roster when, we were signing people from other people's practice squads, or whatever little kind of trickery he was doing to make sure that people stayed here. All those little things kind of really added up all the way through the year. Ash has kind of delved into the archives of UDFA offensive tackles just for the benefit of Anne, I think. So he started.
I don't know who the best one is, but I've only got one in mind.
Go on then.
Well, so I can't remember if he was a UDFA or 7th rounder, but Jason Peters was a tight end converted, and obviously went on to be one of the best in the league. So
yeah, UDFA, I'm pretty sure.
Was he?
You said UDFA here. Larry Little, apparently he was a Finns OT of the early 80s. Nate Newton.
I've already won my argument if we're going back to the early 80s.
That is serious research. I love it.
I know. Joe Jacoby, apparently UDFA OT from the 80s Redskins, won 3 straight Super Bowls and made the 80s all-decade team as a UDFA offensive tackle, which is pretty outstanding.
So this is back in the 80s when we're saying, scouting would have been a lot less thorough than it is now. When you go into parts of the country and you don't know about them as much, I would say.
How do you like his last one? Lou the Toe Grozer was an offensive tackle / kicker UDFA in the 40s and 50s Browns, who switched to pure kicker in the 60s.
So no one this decade then.
No one this decade.
Millennium.
I mean, we have to get footage of that. I need to see an offensive tackle kicker combo.
It's so great. Right. Sorry.
I bet it looked like Harvin Presley, didn't it? I bet it was a monster. Oh, tiny.
Toe punting it through as well.
You would think the legs that some of these tackles have, they would be able to whack it a fair way, wouldn't they?
There's a lot of finesse at being a kicker, though. There's not a huge amount of really fat kickers, which is why Randy has his name, right?
So you got the ladies, man, Blankenship, Rodrigo. Everybody wants to be Rodrigo.
I really hope that that's his nickname going forward. Rodrigo, the ladies' man Blankenship. That would be such a cool nickname. Right, let's move on to the main event next weekend, the Super Bowl. It's LA Rams at home, but at the Cincinnati Bengals. And And it starts off the betting with a 4-point handicap in favour of the Rams. They are 1-2 on the money line. Over under 48.5 points, so expecting a fairly high scoring game. Having a look at the teams, it looks like a lot of the questionable people might actually make it so far. Tyler Higbee might be trending towards playing for the Rams. You've also got CJ Azuma trending towards playing. So both tight ends look like they might be making it after what look like pretty catastrophic injuries in the conference championships. But this is a game of matchups, as every NFL game is, and you've got some really good ones out there. The Bengals' awful O-line going up against the Rams' defensive line. You've also got the opposite side of that in the trenches. The Bengals' defensive line headed up by Trey Hendrickson, as we've already mentioned, up against this Rams O-line, who look like they're going to have Whitworth again playing, which, is no given considering the injuries he's faced recently. But that O-line has given up a lot of sacks this year, and, it's going to be an interesting battle. And then you've got both wide receiver cores absolutely stacked. And again, apart from Ramsey, obviously one of the best in his position, and Ryan mentioned the safety out of Cincinnati as well, these secondaries are going to be tested to their absolute limit by two quarterbacks at the peak of their powers right now. What do you make of this Super Bowl, you guys? Any hot takes? What do you think is going to happen? Is Stafford going to finally do it, or are the Bengals going to make Lions' dreams kind of be realised? The idea that we might be able to do this in a short space of time. What are your thoughts?
Rams win by 25, which is coincidentally the same number of sacks that Joe Burrow is going to take.
Wow. Okay.
I'm sorry, but I can't see that. Joe Burrow is the most sacked quarterback in the league. But 51 hits he's had this year, and he's going up against the best D-line in football. Von Miller's at the peak of his powers at the minute. Aaron Donald is Aaron Donald. And then even behind then, you've just got high-level guys who are playing really well at the minute. Even Ashawn's playing well at this moment in time. And I just think they're going to kill him. I want the Bengals to win. I really, really, really do. But that is just a mismatch and a half. He's been sacked so many times. I mean, the Titans got him, 9 times in the first round of the playoffs? Titans got him 9 times. They managed to sneak by a win, but the Rams just have a lot more talent deep down. And although the Bengals' defensive line is incredibly good at stopping the run, we know that they've got a quarterback who can throw the ball around as and when he wants to. They can make do without the run as much. I really, really want the Bengals to win, but I just see Burrow getting killed by those, like Floyd, by Donald, by Von Miller. I think it just feels like an inevitability. They've gone all in this year. They've gone proper all in. They've got the superstars there. That's what they've done. Come out on the big occasion.
Tom, why don't you have a word before you go, because I know you need to pop off.
Yeah, so you could say this at different times during the other matches the Bengals have gone in and won, but I really struggle to see any area where the Bengals are stronger than the Rams. Obviously, the Chiefs' super high-powered offense, which then started to fail in the second half of the championship game. Could that happen to the Rams? Yes. I don't expect it to, but it could happen. But it's that Rams D-line against the Bengals O-line. I just don't see how that doesn't end in tears. And I really struggle to see a way that the Bengals win this game, and I would absolutely love them to. I will be heavily supporting the Bengals. Obviously, I will not be upset at all if Stafford wins. I would love him to win as well, but I'm always an underdog fan. So, I would like it to happen. I think the Rams would have to lay an egg in the sense that they did with the Bucs, right? They were up by, 25, and then almost threw it away, but then still managed to make a play late in the game, which Stafford always seems to do. So, look, I think the Rams will win. I don't know if it will be by 25, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was quite a big win. But I'm very hopeful that the Bengals, obviously, we'll talk about Burrow, but seeing Jamar Chase versus Jalen Ramsey will be absolutely fantastic. I am excited to see Jesse Bates play against this high-powered offense. I'm excited for it, but I'm struggling to see ways the Bengals can win this. Tell me otherwise.
Ryan?
See, I think the Bengals can sneak it out because I think Joe Mixon, I think, is going to have a huge game. He has had such a renaissance year. And for a guy that's only 25, that sounds weird to say, but I think it comes down to the ground game. I don't trust the likes of Cam Akers and that to get it going on the ground. I think they can be bottled up, whereas I think Mixon is going to groove now. I think to take the pressure off Burrow and the likes of Von Miller, who has finally got a hot streak now. He started slowly after the trade, but he has got hot now. I think he's the guy that can cause the real damage. I expect them to take off handoffs, quick tosses, get Mixon out in the backfield, and then make it work. I would love the Rams to win because of, say, Stafford, Whitworth, Eric Weddle. That guy was literally on his couch 3 weeks ago at 37, and he's now played like 110 snaps in 2 games. Like, that's some comeback story. I think he's going to make a big play. I can see him doing something like a big interception. And I think this one is going to be a lot closer than people think. I think it comes down to it being less than a score. I think it's going to be maybe a 6-point game. But I think the Bengals can just eke this one out. And I think they can manage the clock. If the Bengals are able to keep Kupp in check, put in like Bates and Von Bell, double team him, try taking away as best as they can. Because is Higbee due to play? Because that's a game changer if he's fit or not.
So for me, I've put my money where my mouth is, and I've taken the Bengals minus 6.5. I think the Bengals are going to wreck the Rams. I think it's going to be a really interesting game.
Don't say it.
So
we want it to happen, but you don't say it.
No, see, I think it doesn't depend on whether I say it or not. But for me, I have a look at this game in the trenches because that's where I like to start with these sorts of things. At the end of the day, you put your quarterback under massive pressure if you don't win the battle of the trenches. And while I agree that the Rams have the best of the D-line versus O-line matchup, I don't see the Rams being able to run the ball in this game. And I do see the Bengals being able to run the ball in this game. So you take both of those aspects in, and you think that the Bengals aren't going to have a plan to get the ball out of Burrow's hands quickly against this D-line when he does drop back to pass. Like, at the end of the day, the Chiefs' defense has been playing better than this Rams' defense in the last half of the season. And when things weren't working in the first half, they changed their offense massively, got the ball out of Burrow's hands quickly, and killed them with yak. And it made a massive difference. They blew the Chiefs away with that. So that might not even be in the back pocket. That might be the starting offense. Get the ball into the receiver's hands. Because even though you've got Cooper Kupp, and even though you've got Beckham on the Rams side, I'm taking the Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver core over the Rams. Like, that three-headed monster, and Nizuma as well at tight end if he does play. That's best in the NFL for me. Receiving talent. I really, really like the Bengals to control time of possession and rack up the app. I think it's going to be a really interesting game.
Plus,
Well,
I don't trust Sean McVay. I don't trust McVay at all. I think he will
McVay
find
can't
ways
adjust.
to make this life so hard.
I will be the happiest man in the world if the Rams lose, just because of the pain on McVay's face. But
one thing,
it's
though,
going to take a lot to go right for them. Put it this way, everything has to go right for the Bengals to win. Only half of what needs to go right for the Rams for them to win, in my opinion. Not everything needs to go right for them. And the thing about them, which is different from the Chiefs, which I won't come up with, is the Rams score in bulk very quickly. They scored very quickly against the Bucs. So even when they did start ballsing it up for an entire half, they still had enough of a cushion to get away with it. The Chiefs didn't get away from the Bengals as much. You know, they were always within a decent striking distance. They've got to stop that from... Yeah, but the Bucs, it was, 24? The Rams were up on the Bucs. Or a lot.
Yeah,
28, 20. So that's my point, is they can't... If they get that far behind against the Rams, they'll not be able to come back against it, I don't think. They've really got to keep the scoreboard close.
Yeah,
I don't think they can reciprocate against the Rams just because of the pressure they put on you. And in those situations, you've just got guys who you can keep just sending the house forward every single time because you've got the guys who can do it. It's vital they don't fall behind early. If they're in it by halftime, I would give them half a chance. But The 2 or 3 scores down by half time, it's over, done and dusted.
One thing
my hot
you go
prediction is the team that has the ball last wins, because McPherson and Matt Gay are very good kickers. They have shown to be super clutch at times. So the person that has the ball last, I think, will win the game.
What a story it'd be if Ev Mack hit the winning points in a Super Bowl after getting drafted less than 12 months ago. That would be a story and a half.
Who does everyone think is going to be the MVP?
Mixon.
Yeah, I like Joe Mixon. I think he could have a huge
Really?
I'll bet both of you that doesn't happen.
Hang on, what odds do you want here? Because I'll be able to get that at like 20-1. So
It's 35-1. No, I'm just looking at somebody else now. 35-1 for Joe Mixon.
Well, I'm putting a tenner on that.
I like it.
I like those odds for sure.
I'll bet you both that doesn't happen. Happily.
Hang on, do you want to take the 1 on the 35? Because if you want to take the 1 on 35, I'll bet it with you rather than bet it with Bet365. I'll give you a discount. I'll give you 32.
Oh, that's very genuine. Yeah.
Ash
quite
generous.
Yeah.
Ash says Evan McPherson for MVP.
Yes, Ash. Love it.
Yeah, that's it. I'll take that one.
Evan McPherson is 100-1. So, you can make some decent dollar on that. I don't know how many times the kicker has the kicker ever been Super Bowl MVP?
Can't have happened.
Von Miller's 50-1, which I think is interesting because it wouldn't surprise me if he just had one of his kind of 2.5 sack games or something. But
he's been crazy.
Super Bowl MVP on the defensive side of the ball would be insane.
Yeah,
he's been on fire in the playoffs. Literally on fire.
Oh,
I think I'm very certain I saw Ryan say on Twitter that Von Miller was going to have the best game of his life in the Super Bowl or something to that degree. Am I wrong, Ryan?
Round. I said the last round.
Oh, all right.
I don't think it was that good either.
I could take T. Higgins. I could be convinced by T. Higgins. He's had a really good playoffs.
Fair. I think Chase would have a good chance. If Chase can get the better of Ramsey and get a couple of touchdowns and 100 yards, you'd have to give him MVP.
Yeah, you would. But I think the thing is that teams have sold out in locking him down to the benefit of every other talent in that Bengals receiving core. And I think that will happen again. I think Ramsey will take Chase out of the game, which will open it up for Higgins.
Yeah, but I think Ramsey get mossed by Evans in the last one. Completely and utterly mossed by him.
Once.
I think Ramsey matched up better.
That is all it takes. Once. One mistake, one touchdown, one Super Bowl.
Tyler Boyd's
100-1. But I mean, I think you're kind of touching on it here is if Chase wins MVP, and this will make you very happy, but Sean McVay should be fired because there is no way you can let Jamar Chase beat you. If T. Higgins beats you or if Tyler Boyd beats you and they go for 150 and 2 touchdowns, then okay, fair enough. But there is no way you can let Jamar Chase take over this game.
I think McVay should be fired if they lose. The amount he's spent putting this team together, they should accept nothing less.
I feel like you would say he should be fired if they win, though. So just fire him anyway.
Well, no. You can't fire a Super Bowl winning coach, really, can you? Unless you're the Eagles, you have a couple of bad years. You want to fire him, but
be careful what you wish for. What if we fire him and he's our next offensive coordinator? Like, what are you going to do? You'll be so conflicted.
Oh no, well, we'll hire Ben Johnson soon enough, so that's fine.
Ash says that it wasn't NFL Super Bowl MVP, but the actual MVP in 1982 was a kicker, Mark Mosley, apparently.
Wow.
Which just...
What did he do?
I don't know. It boggles the mind, doesn't it? But there we go, yeah.
I feel like with the Patriots in so many Super Bowls, they'd be like a team who'd kick 30 points just because they can and still win a game. I'd have thought they might have had a kicking MVP.
Oh, Vinatieri.
He says that a kick returner has won Super Bowl MVP, and it's not Devin Hester.
Oh, I was just about to say that.
Percy Hart? No, that wasn't Harvard who won it that year, was it?
I don't know. He's going to have to give me the answer in a minute.
Ravens? Oh, Jaco.
He wore 12, didn't he? 'Cause
1997. Apparently, that probably doesn't help.
My time.
Yeah.
Yeah, Desmond Howard. Apparently.
Okay. He was Super Bowl MVP. Michigan legend, right?
Apparently so.
Heisman winner.
There we are.
Was he the original Heisman, I want to say? Was he the original Heisman, Desmond Howard? Can't remember.
Not a clue. We can research that for another time. But any final thoughts on this before we wrap up?
I just hope it's a good game. I mean, Christ, it's going to be. In fact, this is one. Are you going to go to sleep first or after? Because it's what, 2:30 kickoff with it being Pacific time? It's even later than usual.
No, it starts at the same time every year, doesn't it? 11:30.
I think it's normal, yeah.
No, I'm sure it's a 2:30 kickoff for us.
That would be concerning.
That would be bad.
I'm pretty sure it's 2:30 a.m. it kicks off. So even with the elongated halftime, the fact that they never kick off on time, you're probably looking about 7 o'clock in Monday morning.
It's saying 11:30 UK time still on Telegraph.
Yeah,
not that the Telegraph is a particularly it's a bit of a random source, but that's literally just me googling it there. So
3.5 hour game, hour for halftime. We'll be done by 4.
Oh, that's one hot take. The halftime show will be one of the best in years.
So good.
That's not even a hot take. That's a guarantee.
It's a guarantee. I watched the trailer for it for the first time just before coming on. Oh my god, I got so amped. Eminem's one of my favourite all-time musicians, so can't wait. And Dre's sick.
Detroit at the Super Bowl.
That's the only reason Lorraine's watching, to see Kendrick Lamar. She don't even care that I care. She's just watching for halftime show.
If anyone's watching it in London and ends up at the Clapham Ground and you see 4 people in referee outfits, come over and say hello. That's all I'll say.
All right. We're going to wrap it up there. Next episode is on the main podcast, Wednesday, the 16th of February. So not on the Monday, because the Monday is the day after the Super Bowl, and it's also Valentine's Day. So we're not going to ruin our partners' lives even more than we already do with this hobby by doing it then. It's going to be on the Wednesday, so do catch us up, do watch us with that, the Super Bowl review. Otherwise, College Football Podcast might have 2 shows in between now and then. First one on the Senior Bowl and other bits and pieces. Check us out on Wednesday. Don't forget our socials, Royal Alliance UK, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Do like and sub the podcast wherever you get it, on YouTube and Twitch. And if you'd like to throw that Prime sub our way, we'd really appreciate you as well. RoyalAllianceUK.com, my article on Brad Holmes' first year is up. We've also got Ash Soden coming on board. He's written his little welcome article. I'm about to post that at some point in the next couple of days. And then we've got a few articles from him coming too, especially about the draft and who's worth it for 2 overall. So you want to check that out too. Just remains for me to thank my co-hosts, Ant, Ryan and Tom. Thanks for joining me, guys. My name's Matthew Turner. We'll see you next week. Let's hope the Super Bowl's a good one. Let's go Lions. One pride.
One pride.
One pride.